And good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we want to be live on Facebook too. So we're going to bring in our Facebook groups real quick. Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports. Both of those are on Facebook. Want to make sure we have the whole family in here as we get rolling on this lovely Monday morning. And good morning. This is the Falcons Podcast. It is Monday morning after schedule release. The rookie mini camp is underway. The Falcons are signing players. It's been a busy spring for the Atlanta Falcons. And speaking of busy, this guy over here, Nick Kendall, is busy. I am your host, Scott Kennedy. I'm in Atlanta. He is in Seattle, so we're coast to coast with your football coverage. And just want to say good morning. So how are you, Nick?
I'm doing well. Had a pretty low-key weekend. Went out to the beach. It was hot here in Seattle. It was summer weather, so went out to the beach, hung out with the dog on the beach. He's 3, so he's not always the best behavior-wise. He really wants to find sticks and like chomp on them and eat them, which, not the best behavior, but it was good. Did some swimming. It was a good weekend overall, other than the how hot it is in the house, but it'll be cooler soon.
It's nice when they're allowed on the beach too. I call it the tyranny of the minority. You let 1 million dogs into one place, one dog bites somebody, and all of a sudden, because of one dog and the civil lawsuits, now nobody's allowed to have dogs. And it's just, you go, we won't get into all that, but this country isn't as free as you think because it's run by civil lawsuits, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But everybody's free to come in here and drop a like. And I know who always does that is Michael Ranquillo. So good morning, Michael. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast, up bright and early with us this morning. And Mark Schrader coming in from Texas also says, good morning. Jeremy Sean coming in early also over on YouTube. Says, good morning, Scott and Nick. And Eric Ortiz also. He says, go Falcons. Roderick Cook is in. He's over across the pond. He says, afternoon, everyone. And then Jeremy Sean has a question. Hey, Scott, side question. Have you heard the 98 Braves by Morgan Wallen? I wonder if that song is popular in the Atlanta area. I don't know that song, and I don't know who Morgan Wallen is. So I wouldn't say it isn't popular. I'm not always the authority on popular music. I gave up FM radio right around that same time. I put XM in my 2000 4Runner when I got it because just FM radio was so horrendous. So I'm not an authority on popular music. I can tell you what good music is, but no, I don't know that one. And then Michael says he's country music. Yeah, I'm not much of a country guy either. So I don't know, but I'll check it out. I like music, and I like all kinds of different music if it's got some passion to it. Some of this droning on the really weak vocals, and I can't stand that stuff. So if it's got some passion to it, I usually like that type of genre, whether it's country, hip hop. Like I'm a DMX guy, not a regular hip hop guy. DMX has some oomph to him. About the only time that it's soft. I like Zach Brown a lot. So he's on the more laid back side, but he's still pretty good. Brian Bonner coming in says, good morning, guys. Good morning to you as well. Kevin Mapp says, good morning. And good morning to you as well. And good for you, Scott. And I already forgot what was good for me. So thank you.
Bet you don't listen to country, probably.
Oh, I thought that came in a little after that. But no, I don't listen too much. I like, as far as country goes, I like 3 artists. I like Clint Black. I like Zach Brown, who is sort of country, a little bit of almost reggae in there with, the Jimmy Buffett influence. And I really like the Dixie Chicks because I've always liked a strong female lead singer going all the way back to Pat Benatar, Hart, that type of stuff back in the early 80s and late 70s and stuff. So anyway, there's your music thing. But most of the stuff I listen to is pretty hard rock.
Man, I'm all over the place. I listen to a lot of classical music because I just need something on in the background. So more the romantic era. I also played violin since the age of 4 years old. So
that's very cool.
Didn't have much of a choice in that one. My mom's an orchestra teacher. But also I listen to a lot of like indie folk, just something kind of calm background, something that you feel like you're walking outside barefoot. That's kind of the vibe I enjoy a lot of times.
Yeah, I like some Tool also. I think, God, I can't remember the name of the song, and I've called it the perfect hard rock song. and I can't remember the name of it. It's not my favorite hard rock song, but the builds and the anti-establishment of it, the right when you think it's going to end, it goes back again. The drum lines, I'm like, it's a perfect hard rock song. Not my favorite, but it's really good. Now I can't remember it. It's The Pot, I think is the name. Tool the Pot. It's is what it's called. So anyway, on that note, let's get back to why we're here. Chris Walker bringing us back on point. Thank you, Chris. He says, rookie minicamp is in progress. Hope it's the start of promising careers for our newest players. Absolutely. I know that Bijan Robinson, what are they going to do there? It's more about learning. Arthur Smith has basically said this. He said, everybody pass the look test. That's important. Everybody shows up in shape and they're ready to go and they're ready to work, because you cannot work if you're out of shape. So he said, everybody pass the look test. It's about taking what they teach you in the classroom to try and take it to the field. If you make a mistake or you don't know, can you correct it and learn and those type of things? And the Falcons did sign 3 players over the weekend. Wide receiver Slade Bolden, defensive back Clifford Chapman, and linebacker Andre Smith. Those are 90-man roster signings for the way I see, and I think they'd all be long shots to make the 53 at the end of the season. Andre Smith has the most experience of that bunch. He's played in the NFL for 5 years, and most recently of Tennessee. Shock, I know, but he actually wasn't in Tennessee when Arthur Smith was there. So we'll see. I don't expect a whole lot of those guys. Clifford Chapman's pretty interesting. He's 6'5", 200 pounds, and played some corner. But he was on the same team as Tyreek Woolen at 6'5", 190 pounds. They were running giraffes out there at UTSA, Nick.
Yeah. They had a pretty good team, good quarterback too out there. So UTSA, we'll see if they get a bump up at some point here. But they're good. I got Kevin Mapp coming in saying, let's go Red Stallions. Guys, God, I sent you that video, and we both had a good chuckle at that one. But
everybody should have laughed at that one.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It just kept going. The only one that didn't was my daughter, because she didn't get it. My son did. She's like, I don't get it. I'm like, that's okay. You're not supposed to. Yeah,
it's supposed to be just, they do that like on the street with like, what was it? David Letterman. What's the name of what's a pianist? Like, give your best guess at what that is. But on the Falcons as a whole, still talking about it. 2 names that the Falcons.com puts out there is Cam Sutton, tight end, 6'6", 230 pounds. Kind of a tweener with that body type, but somebody to watch out for. And then they also brought in JJ Arcega-Whiteside. I think it's actually with a TH pronouncing.
So 5 signings this weekend.
I don't know if they've totally signed yet, but these are guys that stood out and caught the eye for tryouts. And JJ Arcega-Whiteside was I believe a 2nd or 3rd round pick from Stanford, kind of a contested catch merchant out there. Not a lot of separation, but obviously didn't really live up to it with the Eagles. Eagles kind of took the Patriots route and said, you know what? We're not very good at drafting wide receivers. Maybe we should trade for one, and worked out pretty well. But JJ Arcega-Whiteside, I think it's like with a PH. It's got a weird pronunciation, but he's one that talented at Stanford enough to be drafted in the top 100, and now he's out there, kind of a guy without a body type specific role. But I think with this positionless football, somebody with that skill set that Arthur Smith can deploy, and a good blocker at that as well. Somebody that I'm keeping an eye on, given how much opportunity there is on this Falcons roster at wide receiver.
Yeah, you look at their depth chart, and it goes 5 deep right now. So they're trying to find guys. They might keep 6, and they've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, and not even counting JJ on the depth chart right now. So there's a lot of opportunity, but doesn't mean there's a lot of quality. So who's gonna stand out? Yeah, Joe Canis says, great morning, Scott and Nick, to you as well. And let's see, Jason Heller is not a fan, so he doesn't think JJ is going to last. And a lot of the guys that are there that are not rookie draft picks won't last.
No.
That's just what it comes down to.
And he's there.
The rookie, it's a rookie mini camp, and it's a tryout period. If they were really, really good, they wouldn't be at a rookie mini camp tryout period. So they're long shots. That's okay. I'd rather be a long shot than a no shot. So they have a chance. And that's what they're even asking for. And, as John says, they need more wide receivers even for depth. Depth guys are easy to find. Impact guys are a little tougher. It is a thin position right now. You look at the starting wideout group, and it says Drake London, Mac Hollins, and Scotty Miller. But you change that around a little bit and say, okay, I can drop Bijan in the slot. I can drop Drake in the slot, move Kyle Pitts outside and Cordero Patterson outside. Now my 4 wide looks pretty dangerous with Tyler Algier in the backfield. That's a run and shoot that looks pretty run and shoot. So, and then Drake London can run. I mean, Desmond Ridder can run. So that becomes a very interesting offense. There are explosive players here. They just might not be what you would normally think of as true wideouts. They're playmakers, playmaker football.
Yeah, you might have an issue with, the backbreaking, 60, 70-yard play where, you're running away from people outside of Bijan Robinson, but that doesn't mean you can't create explosives, right? Anything, 30-plus yards, especially if you have the size that the Falcons have on the perimeter, can happen. You just makes one guy miss, and then it's good luck bringing him down. It's going to be gang tackling out there.
And if you get a matchup problem in Kyle Pitts, if you let Kyle Pitts get stretched out, you're not catching him. He covers too much ground.
Yeah.
So if you're pressing the line of scrimmage and you get any of those guys on a quick slant and get behind them, Jerry Rice wasn't fast per se.
No.
My God, he caught a zillion slants for 1,000,000 yards because he'd catch it and go. So it's also about matching up like that. But speaking of matchups, Nick, we have not been on since the Red Stallions released their schedule. And if anybody doesn't know what we talk about when we say Red Stallions, just raise your hand in the chat. We'll help explain it. But I think that video got 5 million views in 12 hours on just Twitter. That's not even saying Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Whatnot. It probably got seen by 25, 30, 40 million people. So just hold your hand up. We don't mind saying it again, but I'm gonna share this screen here real quick and see how it comes up. Not that one. I don't want to look at me, dum-dum. But we'll go entire screen and we'll go schedule. And you can't really see it that well down at the bottom. Of course, we don't need to see the guys up top. We know who's on the team. So we'll just, and zooming isn't working either. So open image, a new tab. That might work better. Now if we zoom, yeah, there you go, dum-dum. All right. So we got the schedule there down at the bottom. And frankly, Nick, I look at this schedule and think, man, the Falcons should win a bunch of games this year.
Yeah. I mean, we knew the opponents already, but just how it sets up, this is not a lot of quality football teams. So will be interesting to see how it all plays out. I also think it's interesting just starting off here, maybe you're two of your tougher games on paper pretty early in the season. But after that, man, it seems like pretty much a slow pitch softball here. Yeah, I'm glad that you get Carolina early. It's a little bit unfortunate too, because that could be the game that decides the division this year, week one. When you have a season as short as the NFL, and it's like, oh, your season isn't over if you win week one, but your chance of the division might be if you lose to Carolina out of the gate. But at least you get them at home, and that should be that's a game that should be a tune-in one. Yeah,
let's look at this, because last year when we went through this, I said the Falcons will probably be favored in 2 games, maybe just one. And I think last year the Falcons were favored in 2 games, maybe just one. I think they got favored in 2. They were probably favored against Arizona at the end. They were favored at home against the Bears. They were probably favored against the Panthers at the end of the season at home. But that's it. So they were favored in just 3. When I look at this schedule, they should be favored in at least half. Let's go through as we start talking it. And you mentioned the Carolina Panthers at home right off the bat. That should be I say should be. There are no should be wins with a team that hasn't had a winning record in a bunch, but they should be favored in this game. That's a favorable matchup. Team with a rookie quarterback, new head coach, something to prove, new head coach bounce and all that type of stuff. But if you're going to be a playoff contender and you're going to get a return on investment on your hundreds of millions of dollars in free agents, and you're drafting a win now pick with your number 8 pick, that needs to be a game you need to win.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, they'll be favored also. I mean, I think they'll be favored at home in that one. That's going to be a tough one. The NFC South is probably one of the more intriguing games, but at home, they need to come out and establish line of scrimmage and just beat up the Panthers. Panthers got a good defense, though, so I'm very excited for that week 1 matchup.
Yeah, that should be a good fashion SEC type of battle, old school, running the ball, tough, good defenses, what we think of as the AFC North these days, black and blue football. You move on to the Packers. The Packers weren't real good last year. They've lost Aaron Rodgers. And they've got, we might find out why. Well, we know just because Jordan Love didn't play doesn't mean he can't be really, really good. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was really, really good, and he waited his turn. But I still feel like this is a game at home the Falcons should be favored to win.
And two quarterbacks who are still pretty new to the bright lights, at least in the NFL style. I guess Bryce Young played in some pretty big games, but the NFL is different than the SEC even. So then you get Jordan Love, two young green quarterbacks, first time going through being the guy at their respective teams. So yeah, I think you caught those two teams at good times as well.
And John says they should have another quarterback, even if the practice squad. I think they will. They do. They've got three. So they've got three. They signed Logan, what's his last name? Woodside from the Panthers last year. So he'd be the number 3 guy. So it'd be one Ritter, 2 Heineke, 3 Logan Woodside. So I think that would be that they've got 3 under contract. And then you're always looking. Move on. Game week 3, and you've got the Detroit Lions. Now on the road against Detroit, unless they come out and just lay an egg, I would say the Lions, who were playing good football at the end of last year, will probably be favored coming into that game. That doesn't mean it's not a winnable game. It's absolutely a winnable game. But I think the Lions will be favored in this one.
I agree. I think the Lions will be favored maybe by 4 or 5. I think on a neutral field, I'd have the Lions by 2 right now. And then you give them the home bump. So that's about 5.5 is what I'd have it at.
And then going to London, and Jacksonville will probably be favored in that game as well. That's a home game for the Jaguars, which doesn't mean a whole lot, except for the Jaguars are there all the time. It's kind of like they're trying to establish the Jaguars as the North London team. You could say London, but it's really not like that. I mean, there's like 6 huge soccer clubs in London. So, they actually have pockets where they're so big. And they still put 60,000 people in the stands every weekend in London. So almost like North London, because they play in Wembley and they play in at Spurs Stadium.
Tottenham.
I'll give the Jaguars the edge on this one on paper. So as far as who's favored in each game, I'd have the Falcons at 2-2.
Same. I think we had the spread on this one. Early spread was about 3.5, 4.5 for the Jags. So I think that you definitely go in there and take one of those games. But as far as the spread goes, it's 2-2, and we're already about to go over what we had last year for the Falcons.
Yeah. Like I said, I think they may have been favored. They may have been favored in 3, but it wasn't more than that. Jamal coming in on YouTube. He says, "Good morning, Scott, and rise up." And Nick, everyone else, that's all y'all. The Falcons going 11-6 or 12-5. The Panthers learning a new defensive scheme and a new offense. Let's go. I like your optimism for sure. Chris Walker comes in on Facebook. Good morning, Chris. He says, "We can't run the ball every play. We still need better depth and find out if we have anyone worth a darn after London. We have to be able to pass the ball at least some of the time. It's a fairly shallow position group. Wide receiver, it is, like I said, but if you start thinking of Bijan Robinson as a slot, Cordell Patterson is a wide receiver, and Kyle Pitts is a wide receiver, all of a sudden things start looking a little better because all those guys can line up. Cordell and Kyle can definitely line up outside. You can have Bijan Robinson in the slot. Now your pass catching options before you even get to a true tight end like Jonnu Smith looks better. It does. You have to positionless football. That's kind of a catchphrase these days. But yeah, I need versatile guys. And when Bijan Robinson is coming up playing 7-on-7s, he's catching the ball. That's this generation now. They're playing 7-on-7s year round. And they're catching the ball, and he's caught a ton of passes. He's lined up in the slot, through his youth career. He's going to be a pass-catching weapon. Kyle Pitts, we know, tight end, receiver, whatever. They'll line him up at tight end because he's big enough to do it, but he is a pass-catching receiver. So it doesn't look quite as bad, but yeah. And yeah, as Chris says, as long as Felipe Franks isn't our third quarterback, if I see him take another snap as an Atlanta Falcon at quarterback, it'll be too soon. And frankly, I think he's going to have a hard time making the roster this year. I do. He just, when he went in, he would press and make mistakes. And it's like, dude, you're a fringe guy and you can't keep doing that. We'll see. It's kind of been a a pet project for the Falcons. So we'll see, but I don't like his chances. Moving on real quick. Texans, Commanders at home. I think the Falcons should probably be favored in both of those games. And now I got us at the Falcons at 4-2. Moving on to the Buccaneers. And it's conceivable the Falcons could be a slight favorite. But if you look at where the Titans are being predicted, the Titans are falling off a cliff. The Buccaneers are sinking. Those are winnable games. They could be favored at worst, say a split out of those two, and you're sitting at 5-3 with the Vikings coming home.
Yeah, I think that because we'll be 6-7 games into the season at that point, we'll have a much better idea of what Tampa is and what Tennessee is. Two teams that are pretty undefinable right now. I think I just have a hard idea, especially Tampa Bay with the quarterback change. What does it look like with Baker Mayfield there as the probable starter? But right now, even on the road, I think Atlanta has a chance to be, if not, a pick'em game, a road favorite in that one. So will be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think you got a chance to be favored in all those games. And of course, Texans and Commanders as well. I think you have a chance to be, I think you will be favored in those ones.
Yeah, so I say 5-3 with the Vikings coming home. And if you're sitting there at 5-3, you're going to be favored at home, even by a point and a half. Winnable
and there's
game.
There's no team that's going to there's no team as likely to have regression this upcoming season from luckiness than the Minnesota Vikings. What were they, 11-0 in one-score games? A lot of health as well. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so 6-3 isn't out of the question here. Then you go to Arizona, who is playing for a number 1 overall draft pick, possibly.
Yeah.
Going on the road, that shouldn't be an overall terrible road game. So you're talking 7-3. Saints at home. I'm going to give the Saints a split, and I'll just say the home game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking 8-3. Jets on the road will be tough. I would probably say, depending on when they're favored, 8-4. Tampa Bay back at home, 9-4. Carolina to be determined, could be a little tougher. Let's just say a split there, just for giggle's sake, 9-5. And then you've got 3 games left. Am I too many? 14? No, that's 17. 9-5. Colts at home. I'm going to give the Falcons the nod on this one. 10-5. Bears on the road and Saints on the road. Even if those 2 road games, if you're not favored, I'm saying 10-7. The Falcons should be favored in 10 of these 17 games.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the schedule, it just makes me be like, where can I go? Where's my bookie? Maybe I can get some of that over action. But again, still a lot of pieces to figure out here. But as far as the schedule goes, I mean, do you play a single team that's like a Super Bowl, considered a Super Bowl contender out there? I mean, really just looking at it, you avoid all the heavy hitters in the AFC. I guess you're on paper, the 2 toughest teams you play again are week 3 and week 4.
You're in the NFC South, and you got the AFC South.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm looking at that, honestly, the best team that they play at the end of the season, the 2 best teams, Jets. I might say the Jaguars.
Oh, yeah.
Could be one of those teams. And I might say the Jets, honestly. The Jets could be one of those teams. It could be your 2 best teams on paper. The 2 best teams, forget on paper. By the end of the season, the 2 best teams on the schedule could be the Jets and the Jaguars. The Jets were in the play. Did they make the playoffs? Did they eke in, or they just missed? Right?
They got really cold at the end.
Awful. It was awful. Aaron Rodgers fell off. He's not. So what? Yeah. Even if Aaron Rodgers has the worst season he's ever had, as long as it's not a Russell Wilson-like drop-off type of worst season, and I don't expect that to happen. I think the situation in New York is better than it was in Denver, where everybody was new. And this, you've got an established team, established coach, and now you're just adding a quarterback to it. Then I think the Jets could be one of the best teams on the schedule this year, and kind of a dark horse run for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So the schedule makes you look at it and say, but Desmond Ridder, I swear to God, that's the answer for everything. Well, yeah, they did this, and this, but Desmond Ridder. Yeah, well, Desmond Ridder went 2-2 last year with that team, without Kyle Pitts. I mean, 10-7 seems not only reasonable, but probable right now, Nick.
Yeah, it's 10-7 seems pretty likely. I mean, obviously, we want to see what it looks like. There's going to be a few of these games looking at the schedule where it's like, oh, why did we drop that one? Maybe it's at home versus the Packers. I mean, Packers got talent on defense. Maybe that's one of those weeks it doesn't happen. Maybe you go into Tennessee and for some reason that week you can't tackle and Derrick Henry goes off. So there'll be a few games here and there. But as far as favored goes, I mean, I'd be pretty shocked just looking at the schedule if this team didn't finish above 500.
Yeah, like I said, the easiest thing you've ever seen, the Colin Cowherd thing, the easiest, craziest line I ever saw was a Falcon. How do you go 8.5 wins with Desmond Ridder at quarterback? This is how. You've got a good, solid team and a schedule. The quarterback isn't going to be the difference between 4 wins and 12 wins on this team. So I just think there will be games you drop that you shouldn't, and there will be games that you win that you shouldn't. But the Falcons have considerably outplayed their over-under on favored games under Arthur Smith the last 2 seasons. Last year it was 4.5. They won 7. The year before it may have been 5.5, maybe 6, but they won 7. This year, I think they should be favored in at least 9, which helps set the line at 8.5. And if you overplay that, is 12-5 out of the question? Oh, I'm starting to get the math. It's starting to the 17 starting to become automatic. I'm so excited. 12-4 has just been burned into my brain for 40 years. That 12-5 is not out of the question for this team with this schedule.
Yeah, and just doing the math here real quick, as far as Vegas odds to the Super Bowl, out of the top 16 teams in the NFL in terms of Vegas odds, which would be half the league, obviously easy way to do it. You only play 4 of those teams. Granted, one of them, Jacksonville,
Jets.
Jets have the highest odds of winning the Super Bowl based on any of the teams you play, but that might be a little bit of Aaron Rodgers, people getting to bet market kind of thing going there.
Vikings
are not in there. Nope. The Lions.
Okay.
Lions are like
they were doing
10th.
well, and I honestly can't find another one because I'm not picking the Packers.
Vegas likes the Saints. Vegas likes the more sure bet of Derek Carr in there. I believe that's what it is going on.
I can live with that. If the Saints are 16th,
I think they're 15th.
Yeah, then I can live with that. That's okay. And you play them twice, and hopefully, you should be able to get a split. And as Eric says, the defense should be the biggest difference in this season. And Eric, I agree. The offense was pretty well in place last year and did a good job. Could the passing game be more effective? Yeah. Was it becoming more effective through Ritter's start after start after start? Yes, it was. Was Kyle Pitts out there those last 4 games? No, he was not. There's a literally big weapon that you're adding, and a Bijan Robinson. The offense should be in pretty good shape. Yeah. You already good at running back. Now you're great at running back. The pass catching options, again, if you look at the whole, when I drop back to pass and I see who's out there, don't think of it as positions, think about players. Ridder comes back to pass, and remember, he can run too. And I drop back and I see Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Cordero Patterson, Bijan Robinson, and I got Keith Smith back there blocking for me. I feel pretty good about that. The defense is what will make. Well, Scott, how quickly is this defense going to come together? They were awful last year. Awful as far as personnel goes. That they played below average was really good work from Dean Pease and the guys that were there. There's so much more talent on this defense, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, just they're deeper. I'm excited to see what the defensive coordinator can do here, but especially on that defensive line. I mean, this has been a horrible, pretty bad defensive line, especially the depth-wise over these last few seasons. Now you have a rotation of guys. Now, do you have that, all-pro guy who doesn't matter what the other team does scheme-wise, that you can just okay, this is a matchup winner right here? I don't think so, but most teams don't. So you approach it from a defensive or defensive depth approach, and should be pretty darn good. So yeah, I'm excited for this defense as well. Back 7 still has some questions overall. I mean, you do have 2 guys that you feel pretty darn good about with Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell, but linebacking core is still pretty young overall. We're going to see how those guys mature, and then the cornerback depth is still a question mark as well. But we can nitpick all day on every single team. We could be talking about the Chiefs, Super Bowl winner, Super Bowl favorite. Now we're looking at the defense right now. We can find a few things to complain about.
Here's a good shout from an anonymous reviewer. He says, Mac Hollins has gotten a lot of disrespect this offseason. Tall team captain with 700 yards last season. Only problem I have with that one isn't that pretty close to what Braylon Edwards came in with from the Raiders the year before. He was about 600 and 650, and he didn't get on the field, man.
They're different types, though. Mac Hollins is very much he's a big-time special team standout. Very good gunner. He's killed it at special teams everywhere he's gone. And also, he is a seam or a fly route specialist, 9. He can get out there and he can get deep and vertical.
Falcons could use some of that.
So, and he's big, he's not only fast, but because he's big, he can win over some guys down the field, post him up. So he doesn't do a very good job of throttling down. I don't think he's very sudden by any means. Has a hard time sinking his hips and changing directions in his routes, but a pretty good player and somebody that I would love him as a wide receiver 3, given how much he brings. But he's somebody that you're going to have a role. I don't think he plays like Braylon Edwards at all, who was more of a big slot, not very explosive by any means.
Did I ever tell you, Nick, that I'm actually a big sap?
Okay. Well, I mean, you told me that you love the Notebook, right?
Commercials. I mean, movies. Oh, I'm a mess. I love this picture from Eric so much. I'm actually tearing up. I'm I absolutely love your picture, Eric. That is so awesome. And if you're listening after the fact, he's got one with looks like I'm guessing little girl. All I can see is the long curls and the big smile in his lap. And I absolutely love it. So on that note, we're 30 minutes today. We've got to get going, but we'll be back on Wednesday morning where we can go the full hour and we can break this down a little bit more. Because I'm real interested to start taking a look at some of these teams and just say, why not the Falcons? Why not? They're in year 3. They've overachieved. Now they're cooking with gas instead of, leftovers, pulling trash out of the bin and stuff and getting out there. So I'm no pun. I don't mean trash. I just, with gas. Leon, appreciate you being here. Just a quick review of the show. We went over some of the signings that happened, and then we spent a lot of the time on the schedule. I think the Falcons should be favored in at least 9 of their games instead of just 2 like they were this time last year. Last year, I was preaching patience for this team based on the roster, the dead cap money. And you saw the reason why. Y'all are literate enough on social media to see people losing their minds when the Falcons drop a game. I'm like, are you joking? They've won 7 games with this team. That's miracle work. Expectations are different now. I think anything under 9, and you're going to get some grumbling, and deservedly so. It's time. It's time. It's the Atlanta Falcons' time to get out from the cellar, emerge from the shadows of cap hell, and go win some football games. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this collection of talent on offense, and then a lot of these new faces on defense to see what they can do. So on that note, Nick and I are going to head over to Mile High Huddle to talk a little Broncos for breakfast for the next hour. If you want to join us, head over there on YouTube, youtube.com/Mile High Huddle. Thanks for being here, everybody. The audience continued to grow as we went along, and hopefully we'll see you again Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock. I hope everybody has a great week. Have a good day, everybody.
Peace.